Welcome to our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Genesis. Genesis 1 verse 1 starts, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." God created. We spent the last several sessions of our study looking at the accounts of creation in Genesis 1 and 2. And before we move on to the story of the fall in chapter 3, I want to have one last session and some concluding thoughts on the stories of creation, the accounts of creation. We've seen that in Genesis 1, the focus is on God is in charge. God is God. All that is, He created. We saw that majestic sweep of the 6 days of creation, God resting on the 7th day. And in the second chapter of Genesis, the second account of creation, the emphasis is up close and personal as God, from the dust of the earth, makes man, Adam, and makes a helpmeet for him, Eve, and makes them stewards over His creation, and places them in the perfect condition, the garden. Oh, what beauty there is in the accounts of creation. I just want to give you one more thought as we wrap this up and get ready to move to the story of the fall in chapter 3, which will come next time. And that is to compare the biblical story of creation with pagan accounts of creation. Now, the Garden of Eden was located in the area we call Mesopotamia, the area between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And out of that area in ancient times, the religions of Mesopotamia and Babylon, Assyria, etc., had what they called animation ritual for idols. It was called the Mesopotamian animation ritual. Now, the ancient pagan religions of Babylon and Assyria, of course, they would make their idols that they worship, make statues of their gods to worship. And they had some elaborate rituals. The craftsman would fashion the idol, and then they would place the idol in a sacred garden and let it stay there overnight. And then the next morning they would come and the idol was there. They would say, look, the gods have given us a god to worship. They had made it themselves, but still in the ritual they say, this has been presented to us by the gods. And then they would take that idol they had made and they would animate it. That is, they had a ritual which they washed the mouth of the idol and they washed the eyes of the idol. And they said, this is the image of our God that we have created. And they would, as it were, ritually bring it to life. And then they would take the idol and they would install it in their temple and they would worship it. So you see in their animation ritual, they would make their God, their statue, they would, quote, give life to it, ritually that animate it, and then they would worship it. This is what the ancient Mesopotamians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians believed about the gods they worshipped. Now compare that to the account of creation, especially in Genesis chapter 2. God makes a sacred garden. And in that garden, He makes humanity in His image. And God animates us. That is, He brings life into us and installs us as the stewards of His creation, and we are to worship Him and Him alone. You see, the story of creation is quite clear. In contrast to the way of the pagans who made their own gods and thought they gave life to the gods, the Lord tells us, no, I made you. You don't make me, I made you. I animate you. I give life to you. You are made in my image. And thus you are to worship only me. You see, the pagan religions thought we make our own gods. But God says, oh no, I made you. This is why idolatry is forbidden. It is the ultimate sin to think that we are God and God is our creation. The truth is, only God is God. He made us in His own image. He gave life to us. He placed us on the world. And thus we are to live as His stewards, worshiping only Him. Isn't that beautiful? Only God is God. It is He who made us. We are His people, the sheep of His pasture, and we are to worship only Him, as the psalmist says. So as we kind of wrap up these accounts of creation, we know quite clearly that God is God. He alone is Lord. He made us. We are in His image. He gave life to us, and we are to worship only Him. Now, our next session together, we'll start looking at the fall and how God's creation was marred by our sin. But that'll be our next time together. But today, just remember, and have a blessed day as you do it, that you are made in the image of God. And the greatest joy of your life is when you worship Him and Him alone. You have a great day, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time on our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Genesis.